Hari Om, good morning everyone. Before starting this talk, I'd like us to give an applause to Dr. Vikrant Singh Thomas, who has organized all this meeting. The topic has been called a tranquil mind in a chaotic world. This is going to be a very serious topic, nothing to do with the storyteller. I haven't chosen this title. I would have called it a chaotic mind in a tranquil world, and not a tranquil mind in a chaotic world. Before coming here, I was in a forest, in the middle of the forest, for about a week. And I realized how the natural world is so tranquil, so quiet. And what is chaotic is not the world, it's only the human mind. As you all know, Yoga Sutras is talking about that state of yoga, unity, that appears when the mind is silent or tranquil, quiet. And we can ask, is the today human world more chaotic than before? Historians have found that within the 1,000 years, there have been 3,000 wars. I checked yesterday, today, which means right now, there are 52 armed wars, armed conflicts going on the planet, which means almost 100% of the population is worries about that situation. To a certain extent, if there is a unity in mind, it is about worrying about fear. And we shouldn't mix up the human brain with the whole world. What is chaotic is not the world. What is chaotic is the human mind. And the big question is it possible to move from a chaotic mind to a quiet mind? And are we interested? We are here on this platform. We are called speakers, which means we have to use words. And words always have a big meaning. So I went through the meaning of the words that we are using here. And you are called the audience, which means audio means listening. If you're not too much interested by your mobile phone or your mobile thought, can we communicate about this? What is the mind? When we inquire into the content of the mind, in Sanskrit you have this word antakarana. Anta means inner, inside, but it also means death and destruction. And karana means an instrument, an organ of action. Most of the time, antakarana is translated as an active mind. And there are four main activities, which I'll try to describe shortly. One is called manas in Sanskrit. We could translate it as the logical mind, the one that we use for solving problems with rational actions or solving problems with rational actions. The second in Sanskrit is called chitta, that can be translated as psychological mind. What we mean by this is all the activities going on subconsciously or unconsciously, and all those memories that are bringing trouble for solving the practical problems. What you call samskaras and vasanas. The third is ahamkara, self-consciousness, or egoticism. That is this tendency to bring everything to oneself. And the fourth one, Sanskrit called buddhi, that is very often translated as higher intelligence, a kind of deep diving discrimination that includes intuition. Among those four different levels, what can we do for quietening the mind? Where can we bring a change into the antakarana, into the mind? Is it into the buddhi, or very few of us are able to develop a higher level of discrimination, which is not polluted by subconscious or unconscious memories? Is it into the ahamkara, egoticism, those movements of what we call the ego, which is so blind about reality, for including others? It cannot bring any quietness to the global mind. It only brings division, fragmentation, and conflicts. Can we bring this quietening into the chitta, psychological mind? Is it possible to bring order into the psychological mind that itself is disorder? It seems that the only part of the mind where we can reduce disorder and bring a certain level of quietness through self-watching, self-listening, or deep attention seems to be the logical mind only. How to proceed? In Yoga Sadhana, it is talked about two main directions. One is ethical behavior, yamas and niyamas. That is a constant search for right action, right speech, right thinking. Right meaning not bringing division into the thinking, into the actions, into the speech. Right thinking brings right speech, that brings right action. And the three of them can only go together. When thinking is right, speaking is right. Words have a meaning, and they don't create confusion, misunderstandings, misinterpretations. If I take practical example about this here, this meeting we are all together building day by day, we could question, what do we mean by this meeting? It has been called a conclave. What does it mean? What is a conclave? It's a word that comes from medieval Latin language. meaning a room locked with a key. That's what it means. It comes from the classical Latin cum, which means with, and clavis, which is a key. In today's language, it is the main name given to the locked room where Christian dignitaries elect the Pope in Rome. I remember about 6 weeks ago having a talk with Christophe, who is sitting here. And he said, who are we going to elect in Eugene? Because conclave has to do with election. So we are not into a locked room, and we do not elect anyone. And thanks God, we, of course, don't elect any pope here. Another example is with the general title given to our meeting that comes again and again here. Spiritual democracy. What does it mean? What do we mean by this? The addition of those two words together don't have a clear meaning at all. Spirituality comes from the imperial Latin, spiritualis, which means linked to the breathing. And also it comes from the Low Latin, which means non-material. And the word democracy comes from the Old Greek demokratia. It's built by demos, which means a territory, and kratein, to control. Interestingly, the word democracy has the same root as demagogy. It is the same root. It is very much used today by politicians of every tendency, who most of them behave like autocrats, to such a point that this word doesn't much mean anything today. And we all know that the first territory to have used this word was Greece, where we know that there was a much higher number of slaves than free citizens. So the addition of these two words will literally could be understood as, it's a strange, very strange definition, controlling the territory of breathing with a certain level of demagogy. This is a possible translation, and it is not a wrong one. Of course, it doesn't have much meaning, unless somebody would believe that it's possible to control a territory by a new type of pranayama. So the question here is not at all to criticize whoever is invented those expressions, but it is only to question the activity of the mind that creates so much confusion in the thinking itself, which is the very strong particularity of mankind. We are the only species that has so much developed the thinking, and we have been building the whole human world with ideas that come from the thought. Thought itself being the manifestation of the mind that includes conscious, subconscious, and unconscious activities. So, as the only part of the antakarana, the active mind, where we can understand the meaning of anything, which means the meaning of life itself also, is the logical, sane thinking. We can see very clearly how important it is to use the language for not developing confusion into the individuals, and also the big addition of individuals, which is all mankind. We then can see that through using wrong words, we bring certain level of confusion into the thought. And we are kind of accomplice with a chaotic mind. Developing a tranquil mind is probably the only possibility to end the world human chaos. Developing a tranquil mind goes through being clear with the language, because language, words are coming from the thought itself. And it helps a lot for seeing clearly reality as it is, without any ideals, any wishes, any belief, any superstitions. Only when seeing the reality of the world as it is can bring a change into human behaviors. We all know there's only one planet, only one togetherness, only one future. Individual responsibility is huge, as we can't depend on others to solve the today chaos, especially the one brought by politicians, also by religious leaders. Most of them have built up the chaos we are in. It is not about the idea of changing others. It's to each of us to take the responsibility for developing a clear thinking and a tranquil mind. Only then chaos might end. In many spiritual paths, we are acclaiming a personality, a leader, a master, teacher, guru. But when questioning oneself deeply, it's very easy to see that through millennia, nothing has deeply changed in human beings. Whoever those leaders have been, whatever the power of their action happened, doesn't been a big change into the human chaos. We are more or less at the same place. When we take into account the very ordinary human being, and we all are ordinary human being, what seems to appear when inquiring is the need for a very clear mind, going with affection. And it has been said for centuries, maybe millennia, that this quest for a clear mind and affection is only in the responsibility of each one. No one can do the job for others. It has never worked. We have had heroes, spiritual great leaders. When we look at the history of religion, we cannot say it's been a success. So, it starts from developing a clear mind, not playing too much with words, so that when we speak, we can be listened, not only with other people, but also when developing a clear thought, which means a clear speech, to be able to oneself listen to what we are saying. So that there is a kind of dialogue in between action, talking, and perception, listening. This very dialogue, if you play the game of it, if you give time to it, you might discover that it really brings a deep tranquility into the mind itself. To a certain extent, we could say that this dialogue in between student and teacher, master and disciple, guru shishya, is an inner dialogue into which our active thinking is deeply listened with affection. Or we could say a dialogue in between the thought and the body matter, which is, body matter is very silent. Whenever we try to give time for listening to the movement of the cells, it's very, very, very quiet. And only this quietness can listen. And through listening to what we think, deeply listening, there is a possibility for developing a clear mind, which itself will also be very quiet. It doesn't mean to stop thinking. It means, with deep affection, listening to others and listening to oneself. And in this deep listening, there is a possibility of perceiving an immense vastitude and silence. Those might be what words like enlightenment, samadhi, or awareness, that might be what those words mean. My time is gone, over. And regarding the different stories that were told by our friend Sukadev, I don't know if your stomach are roaring like a lion or calling softly like a ship, but I wish you a nice lunch.